At 14:27 on June 14th, 1944, Sergeant Gordon Harris crouched inside his Sherman Firefly at the eastern edge of Langevraz, Normandy, watching 5 German Panther tanks advance across open fields 800 meters away. Sweat traced cold lines down his spine despite the summer heat. 31 years old, 8 days in Normandy, 0 tank kills, 8 days watching good men die screaming, watching Allied tanks transform into steel coffins that cremated their crews alive. The stench never left you. Burnt metal, burnt flesh, burnt dreams. The British 7th Armored Division had bled 42 Sherman tanks in just 6 days. 42 crews, nearly 200 men. German Panthers and Tigers dominated every engagement with crushing, methodical superiority. The standard Sherman 75mm gun was a cruel joke, incapable of penetrating Panther frontal armor beyond 300 meters. Gunners would fire, watch their rounds bounce off German armor like stones skipping on water, then die as return fire turned their tanks into blast furnaces. The Germans knew it. They knew the math, knew the ranges, knew the fear in Allied crews' eyes. They attacked head-on, arrogant in their invulnerability, confident that British guns couldn't touch them. Harris commanded the only weapon in his squadron capable of stopping a Panther at range, the Sherman Firefly, a controversial hybrid that British military brass had tried to kill 3 times before D-Day. A bastard weapon born from desperation and disobedience. January 1943. The Ministry of Supply had rejected the idea with bureaucratic contempt. Mount Britain's 17-pounder anti-tank gun inside an American Sherman turret? Impossible. Ridiculous. The gun was too large, the turret too small, the recoil too violent. Britain had better tanks coming. The Challenger, the Cromwell. Proper British designs. No need to waste precious resources on a mongrel hybrid nobody asked for, nobody wanted, nobody believed would work. Major George Bridie at Lulworth Armored Fighting School ignored them, ignored the orders, ignored the regulations, ignored the threats to his career. He welded a 17-pounder into a Sherman turret anyway. No recoil system. The gun locked rigid. The entire tank absorbed the brutal shock when fired, threatening to shake the crew's teeth loose, threatening to crack welds, threatening to tear the turret clean off. It worked. Barely. The ministry ordered him to stop immediately. June 1943. Lieutenant Colonel George Witheridge joined the illegal project, risking his own career, his own reputation. Witheridge had been wounded at Gazala in North Africa when his Grant tank was knocked out by a German 88. He'd crawled from the burning wreck with his uniform on fire, watched his driver die trapped in the hull. He knew what inferior guns cost in lives. He knew the smell of burning flesh, the sound of men screaming inside superheated steel, the guilt of surviving when your crew didn't. Together, Bridie and Witheridge worked in secret, solving problems the ministry claimed were impossible. They solved the recoil problem through improvised engineering, modified the breech mechanism with hand tools, cut a new gunner's hatch with acetylene torches, moved the radio to an external box welded on the turret rear, removed the hull machine gunner position entirely to create desperately needed space for 17-pounder ammunition. The ministry found out. Furious generals ordered them to stop again. threatened court-martial, threatened disgrace. Witheridge went over their heads, pulling every connection he had. His contacts with Major General Raymond Briggs and Claude Gibb at the Ministry of Supply delivered the brutal truth that bureaucrats didn't want to hear. The Challenger tank program was failing catastrophically. Development delays, mechanical failures, production bottlenecks. The Cromwell's turret ring proved too narrow for the 17-pounder, a design flaw that couldn't be fixed without complete redesign. The Firefly was Britain's only option before Normandy, the only weapon capable of fighting Panthers, the only hope. November 1943. The ministry finally, grudgingly approved production. Too late. By May 31, 1944, only 342 Fireflies had been completed, one per 4 tank troop. 1. British armored regiments entered Normandy critically, desperately short of tanks capable of fighting Panthers on equal terms. The Germans learned fast. Panzer crews weren't stupid. Within 3 days of D-Day, Panzer commanders across Normandy recognized the Firefly's distinctively longer barrel. The word spread through German radio nets like wildfire. Orders went out across all German tank units. Kill Fireflies first. Always. Before anything else. Before infantry. Before other Shermans. Fireflies were priority targets. Eliminate them immediately. Firefly crews started camouflaging their barrels desperately with mud, paint, wire mesh, canvas wraps, trying to look like standard Shermans from distance, trying to blend in, trying to survive. It rarely worked. The 17-pounder barrel was simply too long, too distinctive. German gunners could spot them at 1,000 meters. Harris had been a gunner until 4 days ago. A good gunner. Accurate. Calm under fire. His tank commander, Lieutenant Parker, was killed on June 10th. Panther, round through the turret near Tilly-sur-Seulles. Direct hit. Perfect shot. Parker died instantly before the smoke cleared, before the crew could react. Harris had been splattered with Parker's blood. It was still under his fingernails. Harris inherited command. His gunner was Trooper Alec MacKillop, 24 years old, Scottish Highlands, soft-spoken, steady. MacKillop had fired exactly 7 times in combat. 3 misses, long range, moving targets. 4 hits on German half-tracks, unarmored vehicles, easy kills. Never against a tank, never against armor. Never in a duel where the enemy could shoot back with weapons that could kill you. Now, 5 Panthers spread into precise line formation, Panzer Lehr Division markings visible even at this distance. Germany's elite armored training demonstration unit, the best. Experienced crews pulled from the Eastern Front where they'd fought Soviet Guards tank armies. Best equipment. Best training, best tactics. These weren't green replacements or second-line occupation troops. They were veterans who'd survived Kursk, survived the retreat through Ukraine, survived battles that killed thousands. They advanced toward Ligneuvre, where British infantry had established defensive positions in stone buildings, cellars, gardens. 3 standard Shermans sat behind buildings, their crews watching helplessly. Their 75mm guns were useless at this range. They could do nothing but wait, pray, hope the Firefly could stop the attack. Harris's Firefly was the only chance, the village's only hope, the infantry's only shield. 800 meters. 700, 650. At current speed, The Panthers would reach effective firing range in 90 seconds. Then they would slaughter the standard Shermans, reduce them to burning scrap, then turn their guns on the infantry positions and systematically destroy every building, every cellar, every hiding place. Harris positioned his Firefly behind a low stone wall on the village outskirts. Hull down position. Only the turret exposed. Classic defensive tactic. The 17-pounder's barrel extended 4 feet longer than a standard Sherman. Impossible to hide completely. The Germans would spot it. They always did. McKillop sat to Harris's left, hands steady on the controls. The loader crouched behind them in the cramped turret, surrounded by shells. Driver forward in the hull, engine running, ready to move. 4-man crew. The Firefly had no hull gunner. That position had been eliminated to store the 17-pounder's massive ammunition. Each shell weighed 38 pounds, nearly twice the weight of standard Sherman rounds. Loading them repeatedly in combat exhausted men quickly, drained strength, drained stamina. The Panther was Germany's answer to Soviet T-34s on the Eastern Front. 45 tons of sloped armor and overwhelming firepower. The 75mm KWK-42 gun could penetrate 4 inches of armor at 1,000 meters. Frontal armor measured 80mm at 55 degrees slope, effective thickness of 140 millimeters. Nearly impenetrable from the front at range. Side armor 50 millimeters. Rear armor 40. Top speed 28 miles per hour on roads, slower cross-country. The Panther's only weaknesses were its sides, rear, and chronic mechanical reliability. German tank crews called it the best medium tank in the world. Soviet tankers feared it. American crews died to it. The Sherman Firefly weighed 33 tons. Armor thickness 3 inches maximum, paper thin compared to German tanks. Top speed 25 miles per hour, inferior to the Panther in every category except one, just one. The 17-pounder gun, muzzle velocity of nearly 3,000 feet per second. With standard armor-piercing capped ammunition, it could penetrate 163 millimeters of armor at 500 meters, 150 millimeters at 1,000 meters. More than enough to punch through a Panther's frontal armor at combat ranges to defeat the sloping that made German tanks so lethal. The British had also developed armor-piercing discarding sabot rounds, exotic ammunition with tungsten penetrators that could penetrate 256 millimeters. But those rounds were inaccurate beyond 500 meters, scattered like shotgun pellets, and fouled the barrel with residue after repeated firing. Harris carried 12 sabot rounds, 65 standard armor-piercing rounds, enough for a sustained engagement, enough to kill multiple Panthers. The Firefly could kill Panthers if the gunner aimed true, if the gun worked, if the ammunition didn't fail, if luck held. McKillop tracked the lead Panther through his telescopic sight, range 600 meters. The Panther's commander stood in the cupola, binoculars raised, scanning methodically for threats. Standard German practice. Commanders always expose themselves to maintain situational awareness. It was brave. It was professional. It was dangerous. McKillop adjusted for wind, light breeze from the west, for distance, 600 meters, dropping, for the target's movement, steady advance, predictable. The 17-pounder's recoil was violent, brutal. After firing, both gunner and commander had to blink or risk temporary blindness from the muzzle flash. The flash was so brilliant, so intense, that hedgerows often caught fire after one shot. Dry undergrowth would burn. Smoke would rise. The firefly's position would be instantly revealed, marked, targeted. 550 meters. The Panthers maintained formation, advancing at steady pace toward the village. Professional spacing, mutually supporting, textbook German tactics. McKillop's breathing slowed. Deep breaths, steady. His finger rested near the firing mechanism, not touching, not yet, waiting for Harris's command. Harris had trained gunners before the war at Bovington. He recognized the signs of a natural shooter. McKillop was ready, steady, calm, no visible tension, no shaking. The kind of gunner who made impossible shots, who could judge wind and distance instinctively, who could lead moving targets perfectly. Harris needed McKillop to make 5 perfect shots, 5 Panthers, one at a time, before the Germans identified the Firefly's position conclusively, before massed return fire knocked them out, before the Panthers closed to range where their own guns became instantly lethal, where armor meant nothing, where whoever shot first won. The margin for error was 0. Absolute 0. 500 meters. Harris checked his watch. 1,429. 2 minutes since the Panthers appeared over the rise. 2 minutes of steadily mounting tension. The lead Panthers commander dropped into his turret. Hatch closed, combat ready. They knew British tanks were nearby. They'd seen the village. They knew infantry was dug in. They were hunting for armor, searching for the tanks that would oppose them. McKillop centered his sight on the lead Panther's frontal glacis, right where the sloped armor met the turret ring. Weakest point on a Panther's front. The armor there was thinner, the angle less severe. At this range, the 17-pounder round would arrive in less than 1 second. Supersonic. No time for the German crew to react, to see the flash, to shout warning. They would die without knowing what killed them. McKillop's hand moved to the trigger, rested there, waiting. Harris spoke quietly. Make it count. At 14:30, McKillop fired. The 17-pounder erupted with devastating violence. Recoil slammed the entire tank backward 6 inches, compressed the suspension, rattled every rivet. Brilliant orange flash blinded Harris for 2 seconds. The hedgerow 10 feet in front of the Firefly ignited instantly, like paper soaked in petrol. Flames. Smoke poured from burning vegetation, billowing up, marking their position like a signal flare. Through clearing smoke, Harris saw the lead Panther. The round had struck perfectly, penetrated the glacis just below the turret ring exactly where McKillop aimed. The Panther rolled forward 3 meters on momentum, stopped, engine still running. Smoke leaked from closed hatches, no fire, no explosion, no crew escape. The crew was dead inside, killed by spalling, metal fragments that ricocheted through the crew compartment at supersonic speed, shredding flesh, breaking bones, killing instantly. 4 Panthers remained. They scattered immediately. No hesitation, no confusion. Professional crews with excellent training. The second Panther veered hard left, accelerating. The third and fourth went right, splitting the formation. The 5th Panther reversed rapidly, backing up, creating distance. Smoke from the burning hedgerow revealed the firefly's position perfectly. The Germans knew exactly where the shot originated. They knew range. They knew angle. They knew target. Harris had perhaps 15 seconds before coordinated return fire. Maybe less. McKillop traversed right, tracking smoothly. The turret swung with hydraulic precision. He tracked the third Panther as it maneuvered aggressively. The German tank was moving at 12 miles per hour, accelerating, turning, trying to present angled armor that would deflect shots, trying to throw off the Firefly's aim. Smart tactics. McKillop led the target, calculated movement, adjusted for speed, for angle, for the target's acceleration. His hand was steady, his breathing controlled. He fired without waiting for command. The 17-pounder roared again. Flash, recoil, smoke. The round hit the Panther's side armor at the suspension, hit exactly where armor was thinnest, where welded plates met, where structural integrity was compromised. Penetrated cleanly. Punched through steel like it was cardboard. The Panther's ammunition detonated catastrophically. Internal explosion, blast wave visible. The turret lifted 8 feet into the air, flipped completely, crashed down inverted onto the burning hull. Orange flames erupted from every hatch, from every seam, from the engine deck. Black smoke boiled upward. The crew never had a chance to bail out. 2 Panthers destroyed in 40 seconds. The remaining 3 Panthers opened fire simultaneously. Coordinated, professional. 3 75mm rounds screamed toward the stone wall at supersonic speed. One struck 20 feet left, exploded harmlessly, dirt geysering up. One hit the wall directly. Stone fragments showered the Firefly, rattling against armor like hail. The third round passed overhead, close enough that Harris heard it whistle past the turret, felt the pressure wave compress the air. The Germans were ranging in, correcting, calculating. The next salvo would be accurate, would hit, would kill. Harris ordered the driver to reverse immediately. Back, 20 feet. The Firefly backed rapidly, engine roaring, treads churning, new position behind a barn, stone and timber structure. The move bought seconds, precious seconds, maybe 30, maybe less. McKillop reloaded. The loader muscled another 38-pound shell from the ready rack, lifted it with both hands, guided it into the breech, heavy, awkward in the cramped space, slammed it closed, locked, ready. McKillop scanned desperately for targets through his sight. The second Panther had circled left aggressively, now moving toward the village from the northwest, trying to flank, trying to get side shots on the Firefly where armor was thin. The fourth and fifth Panthers advanced from the east, still coming forward. Split attack, pincer movement, standard German armor tactics proven on the Eastern Front, divide defensive fire, attack from multiple angles, overwhelm the defender. McKillop chose the flanking Panther, greatest immediate threat, range 450 meters, closing. The German tank was moving fast, presenting its frontal armor, harder shot, moving target, less predictable. McKillop tracked the movement carefully, led the target by 3 tank lengths, calculated speed, calculated angle, fired. The round hit low, not perfect, but effective, penetrated the lower glacis, struck the transmission, destroyed the gearbox. The Panther lurched violently, stopped dead, immobilized, disabled. Crew bailed out immediately. 4 men running for cover, abandoning their tank, knowing it was death to stay inside a disabled vehicle under fire. 3 Panthers down, 2 mobile, 2 still dangerous. The remaining 2 Panthers fired again. Both rounds struck the barn, both hit within seconds of each other. Wood exploded into splinters. The structure collapsed partially, roof caving in. Dust and debris filled the air like fog. Harris's Firefly was exposed. The barn provided no cover anymore. Just wreckage, just debris. The Germans had them ranged perfectly now. The 4th Panther was 400 meters away, closing fast, accelerating. Its gun traversed smoothly toward the Firefly, turret tracking, gunner acquiring target. McKillop had perhaps 3 seconds before that Panther fired at point-blank range where armor meant nothing, where even a Sherman could penetrate another Sherman. 1 shot, 1 chance, no room for error. McKillop fired first, didn't wait, didn't hesitate. The 17-pounder round crossed 400 meters in 0.87 seconds, struck the 4th Panther's gun mantlet, the thickest armor on the entire tank. 120 millimeters of cast steel, curved, designed to deflect shots. The round penetrated anyway, punched through the mantlet like tissue paper, through the gun breech, into the turret. The Panther's ammunition cooked off instantly. Catastrophic explosion. The turret separated completely from the hull, flipped end over end through the air, landed 30 feet away, upside down, crew still inside, dead before they hit the ground. 4 Panthers destroyed or disabled. 1 remained. Just 1. The 5th Panther had stopped advancing. Its commander recognized the tactical situation instantly. 4 tanks lost in under 2 minutes. 4 veteran crews dead or running. The Firefly was lethal, perfectly positioned, expertly crewed. Continuing the attack meant certain death. The Panther began reversing, backing rapidly toward the tree line 600 meters away. Trying to break contact, trying to escape. Range 520 meters. Growing with every second. Harris made a decision. Let it go. Don't pursue. 5 German tanks attacked. 4 destroyed or disabled. 1 retreating. Mission accomplished. The village was safe. British infantry could hold. The immediate threat was eliminated. But Harris knew what happened when German tanks escaped. They reported. They warned other units. By nightfall, every Panzer commander within 10 miles would know a Firefly was operating near Lingavra. They would come hunting, with more tanks, with better tactics, with infantry support, with artillery, with air support if weather cleared. They would come prepared, coordinated, overwhelming. McKillop kept his sights centered on the retreating Panther, range 540 meters, 560. The Panther was moving faster now, accelerating, 10 miles per hour in reverse. Impressive driving. Its commander stood in the cupola again, hatch open, watching the Firefly carefully, binoculars raised, waiting for pursuit, ready to drop and button up if the Firefly advanced. German doctrine emphasized preservation of armor above all else. Tanks were expensive, difficult to replace, took months to build. Crews were trained over years. Losing 4 tanks was catastrophic for a company commander. Losing 5 was unacceptable, career-ending, court-martial worthy. Harris weighed options rapidly. Pursue and risk ambush. The tree line could hide more Panthers, could hide dug-in anti-tank guns, could hide Panzerfaust teams waiting in hedgerows, or let it escape and face coordinated retaliation later when they came hunting specifically for this firefly. Neither choice was good. Both had risks. Harris checked ammunition. 61 17-pounder rounds remaining. 12 sabot. The Firefly's engine was running hot from constant maneuvering, from the strain of backing up quickly, from combat stress on the powertrain. Fuel gauge showed 3/4 full. Enough for several more hours of operation. Enough to fight. Enough to run if necessary. The 5th Panther reached the tree line. 600 meters. It paused, stopped completely. Turret traverse slowly to left, then right, scanning. The commander was looking for threats, looking for opportunities, looking for weaknesses, looking for infantry that might have infiltrated forward positions, looking for anti-tank guns that might be hidden. Then, the Panther turned deliberately, presented its side armor, started moving parallel to the tree line, not retreating anymore, not running, repositioning, finding better ground. Harris understood immediately. The German commander wasn't running. He wasn't abandoning his attack. He was setting up for a long-range duel. The Panther's 75mm gun was accurate to 1,000 meters in expert hands. At 600 meters with a good gunner, with a stable platform, the German had a clear shot. And now, the Panther knew exactly where the Firefly was positioned. The collapsed barn, the burning hedgerow, the stone wall. Every landmark was marked in the German commander's mind. Every firing position was compromised. Every approach was covered. The Panther stopped carefully, hull down behind a slight rise in the terrain, only its turret visible above the crest. Perfect defensive position. The gun elevated slightly, aiming, calculating range. The German crew was ready, experienced, patient. They understood Firefly tactics. They would wait for the Firefly to move, to expose itself, to shift position. Then they would fire. One accurate shot at this range was all they needed. The Firefly's armor couldn't stop a Panther round at 600 meters. 3 inches of armor plate meant nothing. The shell would punch through the turret, kill the crew, ignite ammunition, end the fight. McKillop centered his sight carefully on the visible turret. 610 meters. Difficult shot. Very difficult. Only the turret was exposed, small target. Maybe 20 degrees of arc visible above the rise. The rest of the tank was protected by terrain, by the earth itself. The Panther's commander knew exactly how to fight fireflies. He'd seen others die. He'd learned. He'd adapted. Harris ordered the driver forward. Move right. 15 feet. Slow. The Firefly moved carefully, deliberately. 15 feet right. New angle. Different firing position. Different range calculation. The Panther's gun tracked the movement smoothly. Professional crew. Experienced gunner. Both tanks aimed at each other simultaneously, 600 meters apart. Both commanders knew the next shot would decide everything, would determine who lived, who died, who went home, who burned. McKillop adjusted his aim carefully. The Panther's turret was small, 20 degrees of arc visible above the rise. Small target, difficult shot. The rest of the tank was protected by terrain, smart German positioning, excellent use of ground. The Panther fired first. Gun flashed orange. Smoke erupted from the muzzle. The round screamed past the Firefly's left side, missed by 3 feet. Close enough that Harris felt the pressure wave physically, felt the air compress, felt the heat. The German gunner had anticipated the Firefly would continue moving right, had led the target, had calculated wrong by just a few feet. McKillop didn't wait, didn't hesitate, didn't give the German gunner time to correct. He fired while the Panther's gun was still recoiling, while smoke still obscured the German gunner's sight, while the crew was still processing their miss. The 17-pounder round flew true, struck the Panther's turret face, right side, penetrated the armor cleanly, punched through steel. The turret stopped traversing immediately, stopped moving. Smoke poured from the commander's cupola in thick black streams. The 5th Panther was finished. Crew dead or dying. Fight over. 6 minutes since the engagement started. 6 minutes that felt like hours. 5 German Panthers destroyed. 0 British tank losses. Perfect tactical victory. The 3 standard Shermans emerged cautiously from their positions behind village buildings. Their commanders had watched the entire fight from concealment, helpless, unable to contribute. None had fired a shot. Their guns couldn't reach that far, couldn't penetrate that armor at any range. The Firefly had fought alone, outnumbered 5-1, won decisively. Harris scanned the tree line methodically, looking for more threats. The Germans rarely operated in groups of 5. Panthers usually deployed in platoons of 4 or companies of 12 to 15 tanks. Where were the others? Where was the rest of the company? Were they flanking? Were they waiting in ambush? Was this just the first wave? He keyed his radio. 5 Panthers destroyed near Longevreux. Request immediate reconnaissance of eastern approaches. Need to confirm no additional enemy armor in area. Possible company strength attack developing. Squadron commander responded promptly. Understood. Congratulations on 5 kills. Hold position. Infantry moving up to secure the disabled Panthers. Prisoners if possible. Intelligence wants to examine the wrecks. Engineers want technical details. Harris acknowledged briefly. His crew waited in tense silence. McKillop's hands were shaking slightly now. Adrenaline wearing off, stress releasing, body reacting to combat. The loader sat slumped against the turret wall, physically exhausted from muscling 5 38-pound shells in 2 minutes, arms burning, shoulders aching. The driver reported engine temperature elevated but manageable, oil pressure good, mechanical status acceptable. Harris climbed out of the turret slowly, surveyed the battlefield with binoculars. 4 burning Panthers scattered across 400 meters of Norman fields, black smoke rising from each. 1 disabled with crew escaped, running for German lines. The engagement had lasted 6 minutes. 5 shots fired by McKillop, 5 hits. Perfect accuracy at ranges from 400 to 600 meters. Against Germany's best medium tank. Against veteran Panzer Lehr crews. By a crew that had never destroyed a tank before today. By a gunner firing his first shots against armor. British infantry began moving cautiously across the field, rifles ready, approaching the wrecked Panthers carefully, securing the area. Harris watched them advance. Young men, boys really, 18, 19 years old. They looked at the burning Panthers with wide eyes. This was what the Firefly could do. This was why it mattered. He knew what would happen next. Reports would be filed in triplicate. Intelligence officers would arrive with notebooks and cameras. Questions would be asked endlessly. How did one firefly destroy 5 panthers? What tactics were used? What ammunition? What ranges? What was the crew composition? What was the training background? Every detail would be documented, analyzed, studied. The engagement would be studied, analyzed, documented, photographed, turned into training materials, used in tank schools across Britain. But Harris also knew something else. The Germans would study it too. German intelligence was excellent. They would interview survivors from the disabled Panther. They would examine the wrecks. They would measure penetration holes. They would analyze tactics. They would learn that fireflies were more dangerous than expected, more lethal than anticipated. They would develop new tactics specifically to counter fireflies, new formations, new approaches. They would start hunting fireflies with multiple tanks simultaneously, with coordinated fire from multiple directions, with ambushes using terrain, with infantry support carrying Panzerfausts, with artillery preparation fires. Today's victory would make tomorrow harder. Every success taught the enemy. Every kill made the next fight more difficult. The war continued. Langevra was one village, one engagement, one small victory in a massive campaign. Thousands more engagements lay ahead across France and into Germany. Thousands more opportunities to die. By 1600 hours, British intelligence officers arrived at Langevra in jeeps. They examined the 5 destroyed Panthers methodically, measured penetration holes with calipers, documented damage patterns with cameras, sketched impact angles in notebooks, interviewed Harris and McKillop separately and together, recorded every detail of the engagement on paper, every shot, every decision, every tactical consideration. The intelligence report would reach 21st Army Group headquarters by evening dispatch. By the next morning, it would be distributed to every British armored regiment in Normandy. Within a week, every Allied tank commander would know about Langevra. The examination revealed critical information. All 5 Panthers belonged to Panzer Lehr Division, Germany's elite armored training and demonstration unit. Experienced crews pulled from the Eastern Front. Best equipment in the Wehrmacht. These weren't green replacements or second-line occupation troops. They were veterans who'd survived Kursk, survived the Great Retreat through Ukraine, survived battles that killed thousands of Soviet tanks. They knew how to fight. They knew how to kill. They died anyway. The fact that one Firefly had destroyed 5 Panthers from Panzer Lehr validated every argument Witheridge and Brighty had made 18 months earlier when they defied orders and built the first prototype. The Firefly worked. It could fight Germany's best tanks and win decisively. It could kill Panthers at range. It could dominate the battlefield when properly employed. But the engagement also revealed the Firefly's significant limitations. The muzzle flash had set hedgerows on fire instantly, revealed position like a signal flare, marked the tank for every German gun in range. The gun's excessive length made maneuvering difficult in villages and narrow countryside lanes. The lack of a hull gunner meant reduced crew flexibility, meant fewer eyes watching for threats, meant vulnerability to infantry. Loading the massive 17-pounder shells exhausted loaders quickly. Sustained combat drained crew stamina faster than in standard Shermans, where loaders handled lighter ammunition. The Firefly was a specialist weapon, lethal when employed correctly with proper tactics, vulnerable when exposed or misused. It required skilled crews. It required proper support. It required tactical understanding. Harris's after-action report included one detail that would become legend among British tank crews throughout the war. During the engagement, Harris never shouted fire commands, never raised his voice, never showed panic. Instead, he spoke quietly to McKillop. Steady instructions, calm corrections, measured guidance. Make it count. That's all he said before each shot. Make it count. The 17-pounder ammunition was expensive. Each round cost significantly more than standard Sherman shells. Each round represented limited resources, limited industrial capacity. Harris treated every shot as precious. Every shell mattered. McKillop responded with perfect accuracy. 5 shots, 5 kills, 0 wasted ammunition, perfect gunnery under impossible pressure. The engagement at Longevreux was not the only Firefly success on June 14, 1944. Near Villers-Bocage, another Firefly destroyed 3 Panthers in a fierce afternoon engagement. At Tilly-sur-Seulles, a Canadian Firefly knocked out 2 Tigers, the massive 56-ton beasts that terrified most Allied tank crews. The pattern was clear. When properly employed, when tactics were sound, when crews were skilled, the Firefly could dominate German armor, could win engagements, could save lives. But Firefly crews were learning hard lessons written in blood. The tank's distinctive silhouette made it a priority target for every German gun. German tank commanders were adapting tactics specifically to counter Fireflies. Panzer crews started engaging Fireflies first from maximum range. They coordinated fire to suppress Fireflies while other tanks maneuvered for kill shots. They used infantry to spot and mark Firefly positions with colored smoke. They used terrain aggressively to close range quickly. They learned fast. By mid-June 1944, Firefly survival rates were concerning military planners. The tanks were tactically effective but operationally vulnerable. British commanders requested more Fireflies urgently. The Ministry of Supply accelerated production dramatically. By late June, almost 400 Fireflies had been delivered to units in Normandy. Still, not enough. Demand far exceeded supply. Every regiment wanted more. Every commander needed more. Every engagement proved their tactical value. The hybrid tank that the ministry had tried to kill 3 times had become Britain's most valuable, most requested armored weapon in Normandy. Harris and McKillop continued fighting through the campaign. Their Firefly survived Longevreux, but Normandy was just beginning. Operation Epsom was coming, a massive assault toward Caen. Operation Goodwood would follow, the largest British armored operation of the war. Between June 14 and August 25, 1944, Harris and McKillop's Firefly destroyed 9 more German tanks in various engagements. 3 Panthers, 4 Panzer IVs, 2 Stugee assault guns, 14 total tank kills in 72 days of continuous combat. Remarkable record. They survived brutal engagements at Villers-Bocage, Caen, and the Falaise Pocket. Their Firefly took 11 hits from German fire during the campaign, 8 from machine guns that scarred armor but didn't penetrate, 2 from Panzerfaust rockets that damaged external equipment but missed critical systems. One from a 75 mm tank round that struck the turret at extreme angle and ricocheted harmlessly off, leaving a deep scar, but no penetration. The crew walked away each time, repaired the tank quickly, returned to combat within hours or days. McKillop never wasted ammunition throughout the campaign. His accuracy remained exceptional, almost supernatural. 47 17-pounder rounds fired in combat after Langavra, 31 hits, 66% accuracy under combat conditions, against moving targets at ranges from 200 to 700 meters, in all weather conditions, under fire, under pressure, extraordinary gunnery. British 7th Armored Division recognized both men officially. Harris received the Military Cross in July at a ceremony behind the lines. McKillop received the Military Medal, pinned on by the division commander himself. The citations mention their actions at Langavra specifically. 5 Panthers destroyed, perfect shooting, courage under fire, exemplary leadership. But most Firefly crews weren't as fortunate as Harris and McKillop. By August 1st, British forces in Normandy had lost 118 Fireflies, 43% of all Fireflies deployed to the continent, nearly half. German focus on killing Fireflies first was working devastatingly well. Panzer commanders developed increasingly effective tactics through brutal trial and error. They used terrain to close range quickly, negating the Firefly's range advantage. They coordinated multiple tanks to overwhelm single Fireflies with massed fire. They employed Panzerfaust teams to attack from close range, where the Firefly's gun was less maneuverable, where the long barrel became a liability in tight spaces. Despite horrific losses, Firefly effectiveness was undeniable to anyone studying the numbers. Intelligence analysis from June through August showed that Fireflies accounted for 64% of all German heavy tank kills by British forces. Panthers and Tigers destroyed at nearly 3 times the rate of standard Shermans equipped with 75mm guns. The 17-pounder gun proved decisive in every engagement where it could be brought to bear effectively. The statistics validated every argument for the program. Armor-piercing discarding sabot ammunition became more widely available by late July as production ramped up. With sabot rounds, Fireflies could penetrate even Tiger II frontal armor at reasonable combat ranges, something no other Allied tank could accomplish reliably. The Tiger II, the Königsteiger, Germany's most heavily armored tank, could be defeated. By late August, British armored regiments were receiving 2 Fireflies per 4 tank troop instead of 1, doubling the lethal capability of each unit. Production had increased dramatically. Conversion facilities in Britain were processing 60 Shermans per week into Fireflies, working 3 shifts, running continuously. The Ministry of Supply that had rejected the project twice, that had ordered it stopped twice, now made it the highest priority program in British tank production. Winston Churchill personally monitored Firefly production numbers weekly, demanding more, always more. The hybrid tank had become indispensable to victory. Harris and McKillop fought through France into Belgium and Holland as the Allies pursued retreating German forces. Their Firefly was finally knocked out near Nijmegen in September during Operation Market Garden, The ambitious airborne operation to capture bridges across the Rhine, German 88mm anti-tank gun, dug in, perfectly positioned, direct hit to the engine compartment. The tank burned fiercely. The crew escaped uninjured, bailing out through hatches, running from the flames. 13 weeks of combat finally hit. Harris and McKillop were reassigned to a new Firefly within 3 days, testament to their value, their record, their reputation. They continued fighting through the brutal winter of 1944 to 1945, through the Ardennes, through the Rhineland, into Germany itself. They fought until Germany surrendered unconditionally in May 1945. 11 months of continuous combat. After the war, Harris returned to England, returned to normal life. He worked as a garage mechanic in Yorkshire, fixing civilian cars, living quietly. He never spoke much about the war, never told stories, never sought attention. When people asked, he deflected. "Did my bit," he'd say. Nothing more. McKillop went back to Scotland, to the Highlands he'd left in 1942. He became a teacher, teaching history to children who would never know what he'd done, what he'd seen, what he'd survived. Both men survived the war. Both lived quiet lives. Both carried memories they never shared. Both died old men, decades later, in peace. The engagement at Langevra became a footnote in regimental histories, a few paragraphs, a case study, a training example, nothing more. The Sherman Firefly's impact on the war was profound and measurable. Between D-Day and VE Day, approximately 2,100 Fireflies were converted and deployed across multiple theaters. They served with British, Canadian, Polish, and Free French armored units across Northwest Europe and Italy. Every Allied nation that could get them used them. Fireflies destroyed an estimated 900 German tanks and assault guns, Panthers, Tigers, Panzer IVs, Stooges. No other Allied tank matched this record against German heavy armor. Nothing came close. The 17-pounder equipped Firefly accounted for more German heavy tank kills than any other Allied armored vehicle in the European theater. The statistics were irrefutable. The engagement at Langevra on June 14th became a training case study taught at British tank schools for years afterward. Officers analyzed Harris and McKillop's tactics in detail. 5 Panthers destroyed in 6 minutes, perfect accuracy under extreme pressure, proper use of terrain for concealment and protection, fire discipline, ammunition conservation, tactical positioning, crew coordination. The engagement demonstrated what Fireflies could accomplish with skilled crews, proper tactics, and courage. It validated every argument for the program's existence. It proved that the impossible hybrid worked. Tank commanders studied the battle for decades. The tactics Harris employed became standard doctrine for Firefly operations throughout NATO during the early Cold War. But the deeper lesson was about innovation in wartime, about bureaucracy versus necessity. The Firefly almost didn't exist, rejected 3 times by military bureaucracy that knew better, that had plans, that had proper procedures. Built by 2 officers who ignored orders, who risked their careers, who believed the impossible was necessary, approved only when conventional solutions failed catastrophically, when men were dying, when defeat loomed. The hybrid tank that nobody wanted, that nobody believed in, that nobody requested, became the weapon that British armored forces needed most desperately. Sometimes the impossible solution is the only solution. Sometimes breaking rules saves lives. Sometimes desperation breeds innovation that peacetime bureaucracy never could. The Ministry of Supply that tried to kill the project 3 times eventually made it the highest priority program in British tank production. The same officials who said it was impossible, who ordered work stopped, who threatened careers, eventually demanded more production, more conversions, more Fireflies immediately. The 17-pounder gun continued service long after World War II ended. It equipped British tanks through the early Cold War, through Korea, through the 1950s. The Centurion tank mounted an improved version that served for decades. The gun's basic design influenced post-war anti-tank weapon development for 2 decades, informing everything from tank guns to anti-tank missiles. The Firefly itself was retired by 1946, replaced by newer British tank designs like the Comet and later the revolutionary Centurion. Most Fireflies were scrapped for steel, melted down, recycled, transformed into civilian products. The hybrid that saved countless lives disappeared into blast furnaces. Only a handful survive today in museums, preserved as artifacts, as history, as testament. But on June 14, 1944, at Longivre, for 6 perfect minutes that decided everything, Sergeant Gordon Harris and Trooper Alec McKillop proved that courage, skill, and an impossible hybrid could defeat the best tanks in the German arsenal. 5 shots, 5 kills, perfect accuracy, 0 margin for error. They didn't miss. They never missed when it mattered most. And because they didn't miss, British infantry held Lingevra. Because they didn't miss, the village didn't burn. Because they didn't miss, the line held. Sometimes victory comes down to 6 minutes. Sometimes it comes down to one gunner who doesn't miss. Sometimes it comes down to officers who broke rules to build weapons that bureaucrats said were impossible. The Firefly proved them all wrong. Harris and McKillop proved what was possible when impossible weapons met exceptional crews. 6 minutes, 5 kills, 0 losses. Perfect.